Hey guys, my name is Seale. I'm a personal trainer and strength and conditioning coach at Upside Strength. And in this presentation, we're going to talk about the high-low training method and its practical application to sports. Let's get started. The central premise of the high-low training method is that while muscles recover from almost all activities within 24 hours, this cannot be said of the central nervous system. The CNS is more heavily taxed by high-intensity activities such as sprinting and heavy weightlifting and can take anywhere from 48 to 72 hours to fully recover. For this reason, activities are split into either high or low intensity categories depending on their effect on the central nervous system. These are then grouped together and staggered throughout the week so that high intensity activities are never performed on 2 consecutive days. This way of organizing training was originally thought of by Polish sprinter and coach Gerard Mach and was later popularized by the renowned Canadian sprint coach Charlie Francis. This polarized training structure allowed Charlie's athletes to show up fully recovered and ready for their 2 or 3 high-intensity sessions each week. This is especially important for sprinters since maximal effort is required on each repetition in order to improve speed, and any fatigue carried into the session from previous days compromises the athlete's ability to reach true maximal intensity. But the reality is that not everything is high or low intensity, and that we're not all sprinters. Depending on the context and what physical quality we're training, some training sessions might fall in the middle. So where does medium intensity fit into this model? To solve this problem, we need to get back to the main idea behind the high-low method. The main goal is to show up on high days being fully recovered and ready to produce very high intensity outputs. So the rule is as follows. If one can fully recover from a training session in 24 hours or less, the activity fits in the low intensity category. By contrast, anything that takes more than 24 hours to recover from is automatically categorized as high and should only be performed on high intensity days. In that context, medium intensity activities such as lactic power intervals, for example, will tax the CNS to a large enough extent to prevent it from regenerating completely within 24 hours, which means that it has to fall into the high category. In the context of amateur team sports, sport practices and games should always be considered high intensity activities due to their unpredictable nature. Unless you're the coach who gets to decide what the content, duration, and intensity of all the aspects of the sport practice session is going to be, you have to plan for worst case scenario and assume that these sessions will go above the low intensity threshold. This actually makes the planning job easy in that the high-low structure gets dictated directly by the sport's weekly schedule. All we need to do now is make sure that we perform the high and medium activities on the same days as our sport practices and keep the low activities for the remaining days between sport training and game days. You'll also note that in the off-season, the absence of games provides us with another full day of high-intensity training. One of the big advantages of the high-low method is that it allows us to concurrently work on all the physical qualities that are required to excel in sports without having to compromise on the quality of the work that is performed each day. We can simply adjust the volume of each element to fit the needs of that day, week, or month. Now, before we see what a training week might look like with this method, let's have a look at the main training modalities and where they fit in this high-low training model. Like we mentioned already, sport practices and games are always considered high activities due to their volatile nature. Speed training comes next. Speed training is composed of linear speed, like intensive tempo runs, acceleration work, and top speed work, as well as multi-directional speed with agility and change of direction training. Advanced plyometrics and heavy explosive work are included as well, followed by heavy resistance training. The high-intensity category also covers grappling, sparring, and heavy bag work, as well as any other training that includes a live opposition. Hard conditioning broadly covers everything above the 70% speed threshold. We should also include high emotional intensity events on our high days, since these can have a profound impact on the brain and the central nervous system, even if they don't contain a physical dimension. In the low category, we find sport skills like ball handling, ball kicking, and any other low-intensity technical exercise you can think of. While often overlooked, adding these technical elements between training sessions can make a big difference toward technical mastery and will invariably improve game performance. Easy aerobic work and tempo runs can also be used on low days. Steady low-intensity aerobic work will improve cardiac efficiency, mitochondrial density, and capillarization. Tempo runs will also have a positive impact on aerobic development, with the advantage of helping the athlete accumulate substantial running volumes with a high-speed running posture. Low-intensity weight training, such as submaximal circuits and isolation work, can also be performed on low days. Next, we have easy jumps, bounds, hops, and throws that can be performed as a standalone circuit or mixed in with the light weight training. Core training and med ball circuits were both popular training tools for Charlie Francis sprinters on low days. And finally, we have mobility, stretching, regenerative work, such as relaxation, meditation, and breathing practices. Let's now look at how we can organize those different activities in a sport training schedule, both in season and off season. Both the templates that I'm going to provide as example are based on a rugby training schedule comprised of 2 weekly practices on Tuesday and Thursday and 1 game on the Saturday. I've left the Sunday out for simplicity's sake. On that day, recovery work should be performed to recover from the Saturday game. As we saw earlier, the sports schedule dictates which days are high and which days are low. In season, we want to prioritize working on the physical qualities that the sport doesn't already take care of. So we'll start by adding our speed work, both linear and multi-directional, as well as heavy strength training on our practice days. The lower body strength is placed on the Tuesday to give the legs ample time to recover by the time Saturday rolls around. Thursday is upper body focused. With that in place, we already have a solid training schedule. All we have left to do here is fill out the low days with the right activities depending on the needs of the athlete. I like to keep the same high days in the off season, even if there's no sport practices on those days. It makes it easier for the athlete to transition into the season if the weekly schedule remains the same. First, we plan our high days. Speed work can be done 2 or 3 times per week. The Saturday speed session could be replaced by a hard conditioning session if the athlete needs it more. High intensity jumps, plyometrics, and throws follow the speed work. These can be done on all 3 high days to accumulate more training volume than if they were each performed only once per week. The heavy resistance training can be split into upper and lower days, or it can be done as a whole body routine 3 times per week. Tempo runs are performed 2 to 3 times per week on low days. The third session can be replaced by an off-feed cardio session to rest the legs before the hard training on Saturday. With these important components in place, the remaining gaps can be filled with the activities that the athlete needs most. Before moving on, I just want to remind you that these 2 templates are only examples and that they shouldn't be used without taking into account the specific context in which they would be applied. With that being said, let's finish with the high-low method's pros and cons. A big advantage of the high-low method is the high work quality it fosters through splitting of training intensity. If one were to train quote-unquote hard every day, that hard would soon become quote-unquote not that hard due to the accumulated fatigue, even if the athlete thinks and feels like they're doing their best every day. The high work intensity is supported by the low intensity days, which keep the athlete active, yet helps them recover for the next hard training day. Lastly, the high-low method is a very flexible framework that can be adapted to fit many different scenarios and requirements. It can easily be applied to the majority of sports and tailored to match the athlete's capabilities. Moving on to the potential disadvantages of this training structure, the high days can be very taxing since all the hard training is combined. This requires great lifestyle and discipline from the athlete, who needs to ensure they eat appropriately to fuel their training and sleep sufficiently to recover from it. And finally, the high-low method might not be adapted to sports that practice and play more than 3 times per week, such as ice hockey or basketball in certain leagues around the world. These specific situations require a slightly different approach, since complete recovery cannot be guaranteed for all training and game days. That's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching this short presentation. If you enjoyed the content of this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to see more videos like this one, please leave a comment below and let me know what topic you'd like me to cover next. See you next time.